Tripp Isenhour is joining us. You know Tripp from his work on Golf Channel, no doubt. He also is a 6-time winner amongst the professional ranks, multiple wins, in fact, on the Korn Ferry Tour. He had 306, count 'em, starts on the Tour, 24 career top 10s, and he's got a new project going on that we're going to talk about in a second called Gap Golf. I will get to that with Tripp. But first of all, we say good morning to the man and see what's going on in his world. How you doing, Tripp?
Hello, my friend. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so let's jump into this thing. I saw you in Central last night. I hear the talk constantly about Scottie, Scheffler, and the putter. And it's with good merit. I understand. But what he did last weekend in finishing second, and his just to give you some examples, strokes gained putting in the second round, he's 128th. Strokes gained putting in the third round, he was 7th. Right? Strokes gained putting in the final round, he's 72nd. All I'm saying is the flow and ebb of the putter with guys at that level, the best of the best of the best, because their ball striking is always so exceptional. If they get even near average, they blow the field away. And so that flow and ebb doesn't worry me that much. So Dominic put in my rundown because he puts in little suggested questions. And he said, ask Tripp if you think that there's a problem right now with Scottie Scheffler's putting. And I'm not going to ask you that because I don't really think there is.
I would agree with you. Yes, I would totally agree with you. And here's the thing. It's not like he's hitting awful putts. I mean, we focus on that putt on 18 on Friday where, he 3 putts from 6 feet. That first putt he hit was exactly where most people were reading that putt. They were reading it on the top edge and it wasn't breaking. Okay, so we focus, he missed a 6-footer for par, and then, he was frustrated that day. It was really windy, and the wind was hitting his shots when he didn't think it would, and, it was gusty conditions, and that's the worst conditions as a player. When you've got high winds that are up and down, it's really tough, and as good as he hits the ball every time, he hits it so doggone solid every single time. He's counting on, that consistency of the win, and that really frustrated him. And I think that boiled over into him hitting another good putt that didn't go in. But that is one of the things, though, that, typically world number one, it doesn't bother him. I mean, his process is so good, and it just insulates him from so many different things and all the noise around him, and it really gets him narrowed in and focused on his task at hand, and nobody's doing that better than him. But I agree with you, Matt, and I mean, really, it's one area, and I talked about it last night on Central. I talked about it on Sunday night on Central. It's 5 to 10 feet, and he's not putting way worse than tour average. Tour average is 56%. His average for the year is 55%. So it's not like he's putting from 5 to 10 feet at 48% or 47%. And keep in mind, that's missing 1 or 1.5 more putts, if he was at 47%. He's missing half a putt. Lower than average per round. But over 4 rounds, that does add up.
Well, the thing is, I was doing it because you've done this same thing. I was doing the dedicated coverage for PGA Tour Live. I was with Dennis Paulson. It was awesome. And we watched him, this is to your point, Sunday afternoon, he hit the putt on 17, and he spoke about it later on with that in 18. He hit those putts exactly where he wanted to, exactly the way that he wanted to. A person that's going sideways with the putter knows the line and blows it over here or blows it over there, hits it on the inside heel or catches it on toe, right? He hit both those exactly where he wanted to. He misread them. But what I did notice about Scottie, which I want to ask you about, not necessarily only about him, but about the others too, because you used the word focus and triggered this thought. My observation was, Tripp, is that I saw some signs of what I thought were mental fatigue. Just you've won 2 weeks in a row. You're going through the emotions that go with that. You're going through not so much physical. They're young guys that are strong, but still. And here you are in the mix again, but he's not the only one. I thought I saw some signs of fatigue from a number of different players, which is interesting because we're just about to go into the Masters. So your thoughts about that and handling that when you're in the middle of the fray?
Well, to your that could be overall, but I will go. And Michael Kim on X, by the way, is fantastic, and he mentioned about the golf course and how, he said they could grow rough here and have a U.S. Open.
Absolutely agree.
And I was very surprised because many of us, me included, when we were doing Central early in the week, I was like preluding Houston. I was like, well, this overseed is going to make it softer. It's going to make it easier. It's going to be an easier. In fact, it was harder. And the thing about that golf course is it would wear you out. I mean, when you go out and play in windy, gusty conditions and you're having to chip and pitch and balls are running off and doing all sorts of things that drive tour pros crazy, and it does wear on you by the end of the week. And you saw it, the mental fatigue on Friday from Scottie, but he rebounded. And I just think it's a frustrating golf course. And I love to see that. As a tour player, I didn't like playing them. But as an analyst and someone watching it, I think it's entertaining. I like the golf course. I'm glad that they found this home in Houston. And I hope they're there for a long, long time. It's right in the heart of Houston. What a good U.S. Open it would be to have there eventually at some point, but or a major or a PGA even. But I think the golf course was introduced to the world in a new way because in the fall it was never going to absolutely the way it played. With the dormant conditions, it wasn't that way. Yeah, probably some of the players are fatigued, but look, Scottie's been around long enough. He knows how to get where he needs to be come Thursday, his tee time, channel his energy for that 72-hole race. I wouldn't put it as much to mental fatigue from that as I would the fatigue from running that race in that environment in Houston.
Yeah, to your point, too, about the golf course in particular, Tripp, I loved the par threes. I thought they were so well done. Really spectacular.
121-yard, 15th hole on Saturday. 121 yards was the hardest hole on the golf course. That says it all right there.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. All right, because I want to make sure I get this in before we run out of time. We've got a lot to go through with you, including Gap Golf, which we're going to talk about probably after we take a break. But
sure.
We're on the threshold of the Masters. We have the Valero Texas Open this week. Pretty good field. Andrew, could you throw that field up there so Tripp can see it in terms of guys getting ready for the last chance that they have to get in some competitive reps before they head up to Augusta? You can see Rory, Brian Harman, Oberg, Homa, Fitzpatrick, Fleetwood, Matsuyama, Morikawa, Spieth, Tom Kim, Fowler, Eric Cole, amongst those that will be in the field. Your thoughts about the big storylines, the major storylines as we're entering the first men's major of the year?
Well, the elephant in the room, I mean, it's LIV and PGA Tour. And how is this going to come together? It's going to come together. It has to. The PGA Tour has made misstep after misstep after misstep in handling this, and it makes sense. I mean, look, they were a monopoly for a long time, and they played the monopoly playbook. Unfortunately, it didn't work this time, and they've had to, bring in a lot of different things. And I think it's going to help the PGA Tour in the long run because, look, I was one of the ones on the player advisory council on both tours, the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour, yelling and screaming that this management team in Ponte Vedra was very reactionary. They weren't very visionary. And I think this sea change is going to help the PGA Tour get more visionary. And when you have private equity groups and those type people involved and people that make a lot of money, they make a lot of money because they have vision and they're able to see down the road a little bit. So again, I think it's been a rocky road for the PGA Tour. I'm not a fan of the signature events. I'm all for having signature events, but I don't want limited fields. You don't need to compete against LIV by acting like LIV and narrowing your starting fields. I think you can have the big money events, and I love them. I think they're great if you give the opportunities for most of your membership, at least starting out. If you want to narrow them down to 120, that's fine to start, but at least have a cut because of the spirit of the game. And 72 holes, that is the measure, the standard of golf. LIV has brought a couple of things to bear, I would say. Possibly the team aspect of it has some merit, but the 54-hole thing has no merit, in my opinion. That's the one thing I don't like about LIV, and I don't like starting a field with 48 to 54 guys. I think the best thing about golf is you have as many guys as you can get in the field Thursday and Friday. And then you can cut to whatever you want. If you want to cut to 48 and then have a shotgun start on the weekend, that's fine. But I think some of the most times that I learned the most, and unfortunately I was on way too many cut lines, but I learned the most about my game in the, in where I was trying to make the cut and really getting my game where it needed to be to try to compete, on the weekends. And when obviously, when you're winning tournaments and you're not, when you're in contention, you learn a lot there too. But you know what? Most of the players are around those cuts more than they are winning golf tournaments. And as a player, that it definitely is the biggest self-teacher that you can get is how you thrive or don't thrive in that kind of environment when you're struggling coming down the stretch and find a way to hit a couple of good shots and make a couple of key putts and make that cut by one or two shots and then have a good weekend. I learned more about my game in those times than I ever did winning tournaments.
Oh, learning about your game is the perfect segue to where we're about to go in just a couple of minutes. But to your point about the merits of a full field event or even a modified full field event and having a cut, look what just took place. Stephen Jaeger, who is a brilliant player, and we were all kind of waiting for him to do on the PGA Tour what he did on the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the ability to fearlessly go low. He took down the #1 ranked player in the world. So to the point where if people talk about weaker fields, okay, tell me about a weaker field. Then wouldn't it suggest that the #1 player in the world is going to blow away everybody else? He didn't. Stephen Jaeger won. And so for me as a golf fan, I think that that's the ultimate thing. We saw the same thing. I keep going back to Eric Cole and Chris Kirk at the Honda. Yeah. That was one of the most entertaining tournaments of the year, and I was very entertained this past weekend because of precisely what you're talking about.
Well, but you're eliminating the Eric Coles by making these fields like set. What his story last year, I love that, and I love what it did. I mean, here's a guy who was on the mini tours making as much money as you could possibly make on the mini tours, but he went through that journey and he was able to finally break through. But we're putting roadblocks for the Eric Coles of the world. We're putting roadblocks for even the guys like Victor Hovland and Scottie Scheffler who came through the Korn Ferry Tour. We're making their time a lot longer when you're putting these roadblocks to get in the elevated events where there are more points and all the different things. That's why I say, give the opportunity, let the meritocracy of golf do its thing, because it's the ultimate meritocracy. And that's one of the things that I think is being shaved away in this environment of these, we only need 50, 60 guys in a field to make it special. You know what? U.S. Open's been special for a long time. They start their field with 156, and you know what? How many of them are qualifiers that you've never heard of? Those are always pretty good stories. So, it's not just the 50 that drive everything.
So a couple of things that we've learned so far in terms of management style: don't react, envision, and then consider that more instead of less is probably a better way to go. Okay, Andrew, do me a favor. Throw the odds up there for the Masters. Tripp, to wrap up here, because I want to make sure we have enough time on the other side of this for Gap Golf. Two guys. Two names. I'll give you two from this list or otherwise for your favorites for the Masters.
You've got to say Scottie Scheffler. I mean, how do you not say Scottie Scheffler? And also, who plays really good with a chip on his shoulder? Jon Rahm. We could see Nick Faldo here. I'm just saying. I think we could see back-to-back Masters champions. I just think he's got a lot to prove, that his going to live was the right thing, which I think it was at the time. I mean, why wouldn't you? I don't blame John at all, because he knows now there's going to be a pathway back and go take the money and play less but still have the majors. You know what? They're going to be maybe eating tapas 2 years in a row at the Champions Dinner.
All right, Scottie Scheffler, Jon Rahm, officially in the books for Tripp Isenhour.
I've had the privilege of playing against and analyzing the best players in the game. It's the things that happen away from the golf course, away from the tournament site that you never see, that makes these great champions exactly what they are. That's what I want to help you with. I want to teach you these tour-proven techniques and strategies that consistently deliver lower scores. Come along with me. Let's bridge the gap between where your game is now and where you want it to be.
That's it. That's gap golf. That's the concept that Tripp has put out to the world. So, Tripp, I guess the place where I'd want to start, base level, right? What is it? How did you conceive it, and what are you doing with it?
Well, the genesis of it, Matt, was, my best friend is Bill McDonald, the coach at University of South Carolina, and we played golf at Georgia Tech together. We were like brothers, and he had a team that was struggling in the fall back up. It was about 5-6 years ago. And he said, hey, you're really good with, your scoring clubs, and you were always really good with those and your short game. And he said, just come talk to my team. He said, I got to get these guys motivated. They're not working in the right areas of the game. He said they love hitting balls and but they're just not, they're not scoring. And so I went down and 1st of January and met with the team. He made me the volunteer assistant men's golf coach so I could come down and work with them occasionally. And so I talked to the team and just kind of told them what I did, how I went about, hitting wedges and how important 150 yards and in. I worked with Dr. Bob Rotella since the time I was 16 years old, and he hammered it in my head that if you want to be good at golf, this isn't the sexy stuff. This is the meat and potatoes. And if you really want to, get really good, this is where you got to spend your time, and it helps build your mental confidence and everything else. So I worked with that team and then explained, I call it the core number system now, which is a system that I kind of came up with for getting your numbers with each of your wedges. And then I told them how to kind of practice spend their time on their short game and putting. And that team went on and they bought in and they worked, at this stuff, and they won 3 of their next 4 tournaments that year. And that was a team that hadn't won anything. So, that was great. And I'm still with Golf Channel. I have, all this stuff, and I would occasionally go down and work with some kids. And then when I would do it, the kids that would buy in, they would go on and win tournaments and play well. So I was just doing it kind of on the side. And, this last year, I have not a full-time contract with Golf Channel for the first time really in 12 years. I'm still, with Golf Channel and have a great deal, but I've got a little bit more time. So I was like, I'm really passionate about this. And I started doing it. I worked with another college team in the fall, and one of their players went on and won a tournament by 6 shots after, applying the things that I told him. It's no secret. It's what tour players do. I mean, this is what makes us tour players, is the fact that we don't just stand on the range and hit balls, and our time is very important to us. So we figured out ways to spend that time efficiently and use the tools that are available to anybody. And it just is a matter of putting in the time. And like I said, it's not the sexy work, it's the grunt work, but it's the stuff, if you do it, it always pays dividends. And then, I did a project with Dr. Bob Rotella years ago, 18 years ago, and we had a great run with that. And it really, all of his mental strategies are interwoven in this. And, I have a lot of that material that I was just like, I talked to Doc the other day. I'm like, this stuff is timeless. I'm like, and he's like, I've been saying it for 40 years, because much of the game, they want to sell the long game. That's the sexy thing. I mean, we got driving ranges, we got all this different stuff, but what we don't have is, people focusing totally on the mental and the practice and how to spend it efficiently. So that's really the genesis of it, and where I am now. And you know what? I'm having a ball with it. It is fun because it's great to help people get better. And that's the one thing that I do know. If you apply some of these things in your practice and how you go about the game of golf, no matter who you are, you're going to see improvement.
There were 3 things that you said through the course of this that stood out, Tripp, to me. One of them is the phrase you just uttered, which was, no matter who you are. You used the word anybody, and then you talked about tools. So for our people that are watching or listening to us wherever they are around the world, how does the rubber meet the road in this? How do they get involved? What do they get from this? Is this you coaching them one-on-one? Is it a library of services available to them, like they go on the website? How does it all work?
Well, if you join the membership, you get access to a treasure trove of of mental game content with Dr. Bob Rotella. That, I mean, just watching that is going to help you, and there's going to be a lot more of that to come. You get drills, you got information. I mean, I have a conversation with Zach Johnson in there where he and I sat down and we talked for 15, 16 minutes. And Zach on short game, it's so good. I've got Stuart Sink and I did the same thing. There's all sorts of video content, and there's a whole library of drills and games and information on green reading, on how to practice your drills. Just that's for members; they get tons of that. I have premium memberships that are more where you get to work with me as far as I look at some of the stats through two of my partners or Arcos, which is very familiar in there, and UpGame is another beautiful data platform where I can take a look at your stats and I can prescribe, a platform. Now that's typically for the better player, and that's more for, the elite juniors. And that's really not necessarily elite juniors, or just juniors or college level players, or even young pros trying to get going. I take my expertise as an analyst that I've been doing now for 13 years. And I say, okay, here's our weak points. Here's how to spend your time. And oh, by the way, here's some mental strategies from Dr. Bob Rotella that'll really help you in these areas. So that's kind of the stratification. I do have an elite series, and that's by invitation only, because those are the players that get my full one-on-one attention. And that's not going to be a high number. That's going to be like 10 to 12 people. But that is an application, and I want to screen people for that, make sure that they'll put in the time so that I'm not wasting their time and they're not wasting mine. And again, that's the elite series aspect of it. But just joining Gap Golf, and there's going to be so much more. I've got video content, just tons of it that will really help your game in a lot of different ways.
All right, it's called GapGolfCoach.com, the website, GapGolfCoach.com. So, Andrew, could you put that up there someplace so if people didn't understand what I just said? And
Matt, one other thing, just so you get the name and why I came up with Gap Golf is I want to bridge the gap in traditional teaching and coaching. Not to say that that's not important. Please go and get lessons and get better physically. Do all that stuff. There's a gap between that and performance and short game and what tour players do, and that's what I'm doing, is trying to bridge that gap.
I can't wait to see it. I'm going to head on to the site because I'm really interested in some of this video content that you've put together. Obviously, you've put in a tremendous amount of time to create all that. It is not easy to do. And then the different levels that people can make a commitment. What are you willing to do for your game? How high do you want to aspire with the game that you have? Do you want to work with one of the best in the world? Do you want to work with a tour pro on making your game better? You can do it at GapGolfCoach.com. GapGolfCoach.com. There it is. Andrew put it up on the screen so that you know exactly where to find it. Tripp, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Love catching up with you. I love whenever we get a chance to work together up at NBC Sports for Golf Channel. And I think in April, they've assigned us again. So you're burdened with me one more time.
All right. I love it.
Thank you very much.
I love my days with Matt. We got to do
good
this
luck
more
with
often.
everything.
I like talking golf with you. I
love it too, man. It's awesome. We've been doing it for years, and it's awesome. GapGolfCoach.com is where you can find the website with what Tripp is working on. Super excited about it and looking forward to get an update on that very, very soon. We'll talk to you again, my friend, okay?
All right, Matt.
We'll see you.